We're just one day away from seeing Utah football take on Utah State football. So, can Isaac Wilson, if he does, because it might still be Cam Rising, start? Can Isaac Wilson win in Logan? Will Bryson Barnes have an epic performance? What does Saturday's game hold in store for the Utah Utes? All that and more coming up on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you're in the market for a second listen, Locked On College Football and Locked On Big 12 have you covered. If this is your first time tuning into our show, thank you so much. You can like and subscribe. Also love interacting with all of you in the YouTube comments. We're available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. And you can follow our show on X at Locked On Utes. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by Gametime. You can download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code Locked On College. That's all caps, no spaces, Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase today. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to be joined by a friend and KSL Sports' Brian Preece. Brian, we want to have you on the show for a long time, my friend, and so glad I get to have you on. Talk about this matchup with Utah State and diving right into it. I do think Isaac Wilson's going to start. I think when you look at what happened with Cam Rising's hand, based on what even Porter Larson said just the other day on my show this week, Cam would play if this was a big game. But the truth is, this is a game that Utah should win. When you look at how Utah State performed against USC and Robert Morrison, I do believe Utah is going to win this game pretty handedly. And I think they'll have success moving the ball with Isaac Wilson in. I think it's a great game to boost his confidence. I think the offensive line, it's going to be their best performance on the season as well. So really focusing in on Utah's offense in this one, I expect Isaac Wilson to have a productive day, and I'd be surprised if he wasn't the starter.
You know, I've got to agree with you on a couple of counts there, JT. I think it just makes sense for Utah to start Isaac Wilson in this one.
Yeah.
You look at what Utah State was able to do last week against USC, against a team where you were just overmatched, and there's not much reason to think going in against Utah that it's going to be any different. I would caution against the assumption that Isaac Wilson would go into this game and be successful against Utah State. I think if you're looking at positional units, the Aggie secondary might perhaps be their strongest unit across the team, and definitely on the defensive side of the ball. And Isaac Wilson, in his limited snaps at the Division I level, has not shown that he's a quarterback who you can just assume is going to have success and be able to, create big plays. And the Utah running game hasn't been strong enough yet to kind of take the pressure off of Wilson.
That's true. I think this is also true, though. Wilson has gotten better from week 1 to week 2. This will be the first week that I believe he is getting all of the reps in practice, which is something Kyle Whittingham mentioned. He'd only been getting 20%. Now he's getting 80%. Even last year when he was here at spring ball, right? Like he was still in high school, which is crazy to fathom, and impressive that he was able to win the job so soon. I think when you look at, they will be crafting a game plan around Wilson. I do expect Utah to have more success running the ball in this game than the other games, just because of the fronts. I think from week 1 to even the Baylor game, that last drive they had, there was so much improvement even from that I expect them to have some success. So I think this will be a well-balanced offense, and I think this will be Isaac Wilson's best game as a Ute. I think he will make nice throws. I think he will maybe be the story of the game just because he plays quarterback, but I do agree with you that I do not expect for Utah to throw for more yards than they end up rushing for, because I do expect, as Utah has done in the past with a backup quarterback, they lean on the ground game, and that we saw Bryson Barnes last year as Utah's backup quarterback, right? Still able to produce, but I do think that they're going to lean more heavily on Mekhi Bernard, Mike Mitchell in this one, and Dejon Stanley, of course, with his speed as well too. But this is a Utah State defense that gave up 362 yards to Robert Morrison. They've given up over 900 yards through 2 games. I know they played USC, but still. So overall, how do you feel like they match up with Utah? And do you think Utah will score over 30 points on Utah State?
It's going to be a difficult matchup for Utah State. I mean, I would love to sit here and say that if a couple things go right, if they catch a couple of breaks, that the Aggies should be able to make this a one-score game going into the fourth quarter. It seems like kind of a fantasy to say that. Like I mentioned earlier, I look at this Aggie defense, and the secondary, definitely the strong suit of the defense. You've got the first name that comes to mind for everybody in Utah would be Ike Larson at the free safety position. I mean, he's as a safety, he's phenomenal. He's everywhere on the football field. He's I think he's listed at 6 foot, 195 pounds. He's a great athlete who is not afraid to go out and hit players, but he's incredible at reading the quarterback's eyes. And that's something that I've seen from Isaac Wilson, is that he, at times, his youth will show and he'll get locked in on wide receiver. And if you do that with Ike Larson in the backfield, that can cause some problems, and Ike can make your life difficult. Avante Dickerson is another guy who's been very good for Utah State. JD Drew at a corner position is kind of a thumper, a sophomore, but he loves to go out and lay the wood. And so I think that with Isaac Wilson, if everything goes perfectly for Utah and the coaching staff, they're not going to be put in a position where they have to worry about asking Isaac Wilson to win this game. If they have to ask Isaac Wilson to win the game, I think Utah State's secondary might be able to cause some problems in the second half. I'm just not sure about the recipe to get to a close game in the second half for the Aggies.
I agree that with Wilson, I think most of the passes will be short. I don't think they want to risk Wilson turning the ball over. We know it's a huge thing with Kyle Whittingham. He does not want to turn the ball over. I watched him last year with Nate Johnson, whose best attribute was his legs. Say, nope, you're going to sit in the pocket and throw, because when you scramble, you tend to fumble. So I do think Utah, because of their respect for Larson, some of those other defensive backs even, and just the risk of turning it over, will aim more for the short passing game while they rely heavy on the rushing attack. Coach Whittingham has said, we want to be more effective running the ball. This is the game, I think, where Utah does get over 250 yards rushing. I think they're just going to lean on the Aggies. In overtime, they'll wear down. I could see Mekhi Bernard very well going over 100 yards again, but honestly, I think it will be more of a backfield by committee approach. I think we'll see a lot of these guys in here. So I do think, I'll put a prediction on, I think Utah will rush for over 250 yards in this game. To that, you say?
Before you ever got to that point, I was thinking it would not be a surprise to see Mekhi Bernard and Mike Mitchell both top 100 yards in this game. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, it's going to be, that's where, like I said, there's just some challenges there. When you look at Robert Morrison at 137 yards, USC was able to be USC against Utah State, basically. So that was an uphill battle for them there as well. So yeah, it just feels like a matchup for Utah to grow confidence in Isaac Wilson with some of the short passing stuff we mentioned, maybe a bomb or two, but you do want to be careful because you got a guy like Larson, and then really that running game get going, because that's something Kyle Whittingham has continued to talk about a lot. I could see Brant Keithy having another strong game here because of the short passing game. I think Utah, because of what you said, Wilson, he locks on reads. All those things are true. So what makes it easier? When you have a guy when you can draw things up so that one read is going to have a pretty good chance of being open. That's to Dorian Singer a lot, and that's to Brant Keithy a lot. And I do think Andy Ludwig is going to try to get those guys on as much of an island as he can to put Isaac in a position where maybe it's just a 1 or a 2 read type of situation to make life easier on him. So expecting a pretty good day out of the Utah offense. But speaking of the Utah offense, last year, it was led by Bryson Barnes, the pig farmer extraordinaire. So many fun moments when you look at his time with Utah. Now he is more than likely going to be leading the charge for Utah State. There's a chance we see Preece. So that is what we are going to be discussing, is how Utah's defense will match up with the Aggies offense in one moment. But first, want to talk with you all about one of the sponsors of today's episode of Locked On Utes. It's our friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time. Your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need, the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Once again, it's ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. They have a wide array of the parts that you need, so make sure you go to ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Also, want to talk with you all about another sponsor of our episode of Locked On Utes today. It's our friends at LinkedIn. LinkedIn is there for you guys. Whenever you are in need of a make hire, that's where LinkedIn comes in. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professional for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. They help you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're simply looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. You can hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows the small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. That's why 2.5 million small businesses have trusted LinkedIn, because they make the process easier. So if you need to hire for your small business, use LinkedIn today. You can post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com, all caps, Locked On College, to post your job for free. No spaces as well in that Locked On College. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, Brian, keeping it rolling here. Let's look at the opposite side. Forgettable day for Utah State's offense against USC last week. Spencer Preece was the one who originally won the job, but then he got a little banged up. So Bryson Barnes came in. He did some nice things. Who are you expecting the quarterback to be for Utah State this Saturday?
Based on the coach speak that you always get in the Monday, Tuesday press conferences of game week, I'm leaning toward it being Spencer Preece coming back and making his second start of the year. I don't think that head coach Nate Dreiling, the youngest Division I coach in the nation, is hesitant to go to Bryson Barnes, but he sounded like, everything without saying Spencer Preece is going to be in the backfield taking snaps on Saturday. So that's where I'm leaning. Honestly, as I look at the matchup, like I think about, you could go both ways. Bryson Barnes brings a whole lot of knowledge and experience with that Utah defense and what can be done against that. He can share a lot of insider knowledge. But for everything that Bryson might be able to share, if Bryson ends up having to take the field, I don't know that there's anybody in America that would understand better how to defend him than Kyle Whittingham and Morgan Scalley.
Yeah.
I think it's a tough situation.
It's a brutal situation for this Utah State team to walk into, because Bryson has done some right things. He might know how to beat this Utah team, but there's one problem. This Utah defense is shaping up to be special. They are 1-2 in sacks in the Big 12 right now. Connor O'Toole and Van Fillinger are. If you just look at Utah's overall defensive statistics, they're ranked 7th in the country. They're the only team in the Big 12 that haven't allowed 100 yards passing or rushing in a game. And I know they've played inferior opponents, but they've done what they're supposed to do and really blow them out. Until Cam was getting hurt, that game was really ugly. The Baylor game was. They weren't doing anything. So I just feel like I expect Utah to dominate the trenches. So life on both sides of the ball, I think, is going to be hard for the Aggies. I think this Utah team is going to have a big day. I'm expecting 5 sacks, honestly. I think right in that 4 and 5 range, just because of how frequently I think Utah will get home. I'm curious Utah State's game plan to try to get the ball out quick. I think Utah's defensive tackles are going to make it very incredibly hard to run up the middle. I will say Utah State has some quality receivers. So I'm curious about that matchup on the outside, because I do think there are times where, hey, those guys can make a play against a Utah, right? When you're talking about some of the guys that Utah State has, right? Someone like Jalen Royals, like he went over 1,000 yards last year. He's a quality receiver. So he's probably going to be able to beat Zemiah Vaughn on a couple situations. But can he do it frequently enough? And more so, can the offense hold up enough time to give Bryce the protection, whoever it is, Preece, the protection, in order for him to get open? I think that's where it's going to be tough. Utah hasn't given up. If you looked against Southern Utah, they didn't give up anything. Against Baylor, they gave up a little bit, but not too much either. I have a hard time seeing how Utah State scores over 10 points with Utah, unless we're talking about Utah taking their foot off the gas pedal.
If Utah State's going to be successful offensively in this game, I think it's going to come down to one thing from this Utah defense, and that is going to be missed tackles. The Aggie offense is designed to go with a short, quick passing game, get a lot of screen passes, two wide receiver. You get bubble screens, you get running back screens popping out of the backfield and things like that. If you can force a few missed tackles, if you can block well on the outside, then you've got a chance to create a couple of big plays, and then maybe you get the Utes peeking into the backfield or whatever, and you can get Jalen Royals over the top once or twice in this game. But I don't think you can rely on 5 or even 7 or 7-step or even 5-step drops if you're the Aggies in this one, because like you said, Utah's pass rush is just so effective that I don't think the Aggies are going to be able to give their quarterbacks 3, 4, 5 seconds of time in the pocket for wide receivers to get open deep. Another guy who Utah fans might be familiar with, Kyrius White. You might know him as Kyrius Rowan. He's been very good for the Aggies. He had a big day in the first game against Robert Morris. But again, it's just there's a tier of athlete that Utah has that Utah has it in all 11 guys on the field at any given moment, where Utah State is hoping they have 3 or 4 of them. Period.
I mean, that's the thing, right? Like if we're ranking these teams, you're part of KSL Sports, of course. You guys did your 60 and 60, right? Ike Larson was up there, and of course Royals was up there. I mean, outside of that, there's some other quality players out there, but for guys that would really contribute on this Utah team, am I missing a name, Brian?
I mean, Rasul Faison, a running back, I believe he checked in number 24, something like that on the recent 60 and 60 list. You mentioned Jalen Royals was number 6. Preece was number 16. And then a big loss in the first week of the year, and he's going to be gone for the season, was number 31, Robert Briggs. And so without Briggs, that really limits Utah State. That was something they had going for them coming in this season, was the thought that, well, they might have several game breakers on the offensive side of the ball. But when one guy goes down, that already has a huge impact on the offense.
I just realized as we're talking this out too, Utah State's best pass rusher, Paul Fitzgerald, is on Utah's roster now as a backup. Like, that's just the reality of the levels of this. So I'm curious to see, like, if Utah State, the game plan they come up with, can Bryson make some plays? Can Royals, can Larson, how do those individuals do? But it does just feel like it's too much, especially as we said with Bryson, whether it's Bryson or Preece, I feel like whoever it is, probably going to end up turning it over a little bit. Utah did such a good job tackling on the edges against Baylor. Yes, there was a play late in like the third quarter where they missed a few tackles, but like that's where it's kind of funny if we're like analyzing that and being critical of that, because how many other defenses across the country could we be like, well, they had one play where they missed a bunch of tackles. Like, that's where they were so good early. And I just think they're going to be fired up. I think this is a team that knows what's in front of them. They know, this Utah squad does, they have a chance to reach the college football playoff this year. Losses like this pretty much disqualify you. I'm of the mind that Notre Dame shouldn't get in anymore. Maybe if they looked really impressive and dominated everyone else on their schedule, but I just think that's too brutal of a loss for them. And I think there would be a lot of people saying, how real is this Utah team that they lost to Utah State? And that's one of the reasons I just don't expect this to happen. I think this Utah team is locked in. I think they're better on both sides of the ball. They want to be able to run the ball effectively. I think that mindset in the backs they have, I think they'll be able to do that, including our former classmate, Mekhi Bernard, like we talked about. And then you're looking at this Utah defense, like we said, just feels like too big, too fast, too strong. And I just think it's going to be too much for Utah State, even though I think it's really fun. This game is happening again in Logan.
Yeah, I mean, it's always exciting to have an in-state rivalry game. Yeah. Growing up in Logan, there's so many different memories of Aggie games, whether it be against BYU or that team down south. I didn't mean to say that on the Locked On Utes pod, but I remember a game where it had to be 1993, 1994, maybe 95, something like that, where Utah State beat Utah late. I charged the field as a 10-year-old, and you always remember those types of experiences. Yes. And it's because of people like you and I talking about like it's a foregone conclusion that Utah is going to win this game that makes the upset so much sweeter if Utah State can pull it off. You know what I mean? Like it's an experience that 10-year-olds in Logan are going to remember for the rest of their lives if the Aggies can do this one. Unfortunately, it would be a win against the highest ranked opponent that they would have ever gotten in Logan. So the odds are certainly stacked against them.
If Utah were to somehow lose this game, which once again, like for anyone's like, that's never going to happen. More than likely it's not. Everyone in Notre Dame said the exact same thing last week before Northern Illinois came in and shocked them. So once again, Utah's going to win. But if they did lose, amidst the absolute firestorm of Big 12 fans who would be absolutely coming after me for the comments I made about Utah being a contender, all these things like that, the lone smile my face might have, and it's only if he does end up being the quarterback, is Bryson Barnes. Just like be happy for Bryson because of how much he did give to this program, sacrifice for this team, worked at Lowe's, I think it was, right? Like worked at Lowe's while he was at Utah. So he's such a great story. But you're right. Hopefully I would be happy for Bryson, but yeah, that's what I will say. Let's go back up because just the thought of a loss and what it could mean for this podcast for me and the negativity obviously broke my brain for a moment. But I do think that it's so great that this rivalry is back, like we mentioned, the fun history of it, and hopefully it's something they can continue to play moving forward. So before they end up playing it, though, we got to drop some predictions. So we're going to be dropping our score predictions, who we think are going to be the game MVPs of this one. We'll be discussing that in one moment. But first, I want to talk with you all about one of the sponsors of today's episode of Locked On Utes. It's our fantastic friends at Factor. Fuel up with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Meet your wellness goals thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals. You can make today the day you kickstart a new healthy routine. What are you waiting for? With 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week, you'll always have a new flavor to explore. You can crush your wellness goals this year with dietitian approved meals and ingredients you can trust. Keep kitchen time to a minimum. Factor meals are ready in 2 minutes. No shipping, prepping, cooking, or cleaning. Head to factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50 and use lockedoncollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code lockedoncollege50 at factormeal.com/lockedoncollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. Sign up for Factor today. All right, Brian, closing this one out with some predictions. I do think Utah's going to roll in this one. I think this Utah defense is too good. I think you make some points about why we might not see Isaac Wilson take the next step forward. But I just think with his game plan crafted around him, just like we talked about last year with how Bryson Barnes, with the game plan crafted around him, especially against a team that is an inferior opponent, looked pretty good for Utah. I think that's what's going to happen here. I think Isaac's going to have his first game over 150 yards passing. I don't think it'll be too crazy, the numbers. I think he'll throw for a touchdown pass. We both agree Utah's running for over 250 yards, maybe a little bit more and change. I think Logan Fano is going to end up with a couple of sacks in this one. I was correct on Connor O'Toole last week, so I'd love to see Fano get in the backfield. Junior Chafuna getting one as well, just as an in-state game, I think would be a lot of fun in this one too. And I'll go with Zamiah Vaughn, an interception, as well as Nate Ritchie. I think Utah gets 2 picks in this game. I'm going to go 38-7.
Okay, I like where your head's at. I chuckle when you said that Isaac Wilson is gonna throw for 150 yards, but the numbers aren't gonna be too crazy. No, I chuckle because in my head I had the exact same number, but I think he's gonna throw for less than 150 yards. I think he's gonna throw between 100 and 150 yards. Probably going to throw 2 interceptions. I'm going to say Ike Larson steps in and does get a pass picked off in that game. You know what? Hey, let's go for the gusto and say Ike gets a pick 6 in this one.
Okay.
I don't think Isaac Wilson is going to have a great game, but as we've detailed in this pod, it's not really going to matter. Utah's run game and offensive line is so much stronger than Utah State on paper that I think they're going to score at least 4 rushing touchdowns. I think it's likely you see a defensive or a special team score for the Utes. And even if the offensive passing game doesn't really get off the ground, I see Utah pulling away, let's say 34-9.
9, all field goals. I guess it's the only way
We're missing an extra point after Ike returns that pick six. We're missing an extra point. I came up with it as I was talking. I don't know what you want.
I like it. No, hey, just like you said, let it flow. I forgot my prediction as well. I gave Utah State a touchdown. It's more than they had against USC. That's because late in the game, Bryson Barnes will come in and he will rifle in a touchdown against his former team. It will be the highlight of garbage time, unfortunately. But that is how we think the game is going to play out. Let us know how you think the game is going to play out. Drop it in the comments below. Brian, thank you so much for hopping on with me, my friend. Please tell everyone where to follow you at and where they can follow all your work too, because you stay busy.
Hey, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on Locked On Utes. You can find all my work at KSLSports.com. And if you're not doing that, come on out to Utah Soccer. I've been doing play-by-play with Utah Soccer and Utah Volleyball this year. So got a couple of great programs, a lot of fun to watch. Happy to see you up on the hill.
Make sure you guys head up that way and support those other Utah programs. It's they are having strong seasons. So make sure you guys get out that way as well. Brian, thanks again for hopping on, my friend.
Thank you.
That's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Utes. Enjoy the Utah State game. Hopefully some of you are making the trip out there. Either way, we'll have a post-game show covering it all. That'll drop Sunday. Immediate reaction will drop on Saturdays, and all of the reactions in general the following week, of course, as well. So make sure you guys keep it at Locked On Utes. Thank you so much for supporting this show. Locked On College Football has you covered for a second listen once again, and that will do it for us today. Look forward to seeing you this weekend.